I'm Danielle, and this is Corinne and Mary Beth. So the three of us came to graduate school to turn our fear of climate change into action. So after 2 years of hard work and passion, we are here to share what we hope will move the needle on this global crisis. There we are. So the good news is, in the last few years, environmental health has visibly moved to the mainstream conversation. The bad news is, this is in no small part the result of our federal leadership deeming climate change a non-issue, pulling us from the Paris Agreement and sending the message that Americans don't care about climate change. But this isn't true. According to Yale Climate Communications, 76% of Americans are moderately to extremely worried about climate change, believe humans are the cause, and that government should take steps to address it. But with this lack of leadership or participation in a global strategy, American citizens feel helpless and confused about their role in this issue. Kaylee, a new mom, shared with us her fear about a sustainable future for her son, saying, "I feel helpless and hopeless even when I make changes. I worry about the amount of actual wide-scale impact." And this feeling of helplessness makes sense. It's hard to believe that any of our individual behaviors are going to have an impact to reduce the near 40 billion metric tons of CO2 that are released annually, or the 150 million tons of sea ice melting. But then again, what even are metric tons? How are we supposed to connect to the enormous scope of this problem while also being told we're running out of time and that it's on each of us to do our part, particularly when the suggested actions include things like recycling our peanut butter jars? There is, however, one place where we can see the impact of our sustainable behaviors, and that's in our neighborhoods. We may not know if our actions are reducing this 40 billion metric tons of CO2, but we do know if our actions are affecting our local water supply, whether they're keeping it clean or whether they're polluting it. And these local expressions of environmental health are the same issues that are controlled by local government, which means they're controlled by the residents in our neighborhoods. So they're controlled by you and me. The problem is, only 8% of the population is engaging locally to make their communities more sustainable. So in October of 2018, we met Rebecca, who is a successful civic educator, and Laura, Vicky, and Regis, all Ulster County residents. And these four make up part of that 8%. From the outside, this small community in upstate New York may appear powerless to a global threat, but that wasn't the case. In late 2017, a fossil fuel plant was proposed for construction just 700 feet from Regis and Vicky's home. A plant that would affect their air quality and their water quality, and all while producing no jobs for the community. So this group of four, they formed partnerships with local organizations and elected officials, and they fought back. And as their knowledge grew, their confidence grew, as evidenced by this quote from Regis, "We will succeed because the citizens have become engaged with the workings of local government." And he was right. After 1 year, they won. The power plant withdrew their plan and replaced it with a green energy battery storage facility, an alternative project proposed by the community. And they saved their community from adding 30,000 metric tons of CO2. But more importantly, they saved their water and their air and their backyards. So if there's so much opportunity for impact this way, why is only 8% of the population engaging for change?
So throughout our research, we spoke with more than 100 citizens and 40 subject matter experts, including elected officials, educators, and environmental activists. There they are. We heard repeatedly that the main barriers that citizens face are knowledge of local issues, belief your voice doesn't matter, lack of time and convenience, and lack of community when taking action. And the power plant was no exception. It took more than 15 months and over 200 actions. It was hard, it was exhausting, and at moments it was terrifying. When we heard this story and met the team, we recognized the opportunity to design something that not only eased their challenges, but shared their process with others. Engaging with local government shouldn't be a full-time job. We want to make civic engagement accessible for everyone. We dug deeper, embedding ourselves in Ulster County, leading the team through co-creation workshops, and uncovering their needs and areas of opportunity. We uncovered the process that made them successful, not just for this project, but for every project that involved local government. We learned what would reduce the learning curve required for this work, bring new community members into these projects, and allow them to see the impact of their efforts more quickly. With these insights in mind, we developed a series of initial concepts which were around an education platform that would connect citizens to one another and to resources that they needed to help them begin their projects. So in Ulster County, we led a series of prototyping workshops to test this education idea with over 20 individuals involved in local government. And they ranged from activists to environmental economists, from lawyers to candidates for local office. And we learned things, a lot of things, and they were very, very helpful. And primarily, we learned that education is a byproduct of action, and that instead of education, our tool needed to focus on bringing the right people together in a room as soon as possible, and that together, you would start building your strategy, and you would learn as you go. We returned to Ulster County to test this updated concept, a platform that would connect citizens around shared skills and diverse interests. And shared interest and diverse skills, prompting them to meet in person and begin building their strategy. They told us we were absolutely onto something. And armed with all of this information, we created CommonJane. The name is inspired by Jane Jacobs, who is a famed New York urban planner who believed that cities should be designed for the people who live in them. The name is a nod to the power that everyday citizens hold to protect their communities, their common ground. CommonJane is a digital community organizer built by and for the people that want to make change in their communities. We know that a digital experience can't replace the impact of the work being done face-to-face, and we designed it with this in mind, identifying our main goal, which is to lower the existing barriers to engagement and make offline relationship building easier.
So we learned first that successful civic engagement projects start with getting the right people on your team. So having people who have the right balance of knowledge and experience. So this doesn't necessarily just include your neighbors who share your concerns, but it is also local organizations, such as NGOs, elected officials, and municipal leaders. And so together, these multiple perspectives actually form a coalition of partnerships that you can then use to address your issue. Another thing that they require is actually an understanding of the laws and processes that govern your community. So also including a knowledge of how to build a strategy and education resources on how local government works. And while civic engagement is rewarding in a lot of ways, no matter how many hours this work requires, it's assumed that people would do it for free. And we actually saw firsthand how limiting this can be. So CommonJane is backed by the Hudson Valley Current, which is a local currency where you can actually earn incentives that you can redeem at participating businesses. So with CommonJane, users can earn currents for things like hosting a Q&A session or taking notes at a community board meeting. So combined, these elements form CommonJane, which is an invitation for every citizen to get involved in local government and protect their communities. And here's how a look at how CommonJane works.
Welcome to CommonJane, your invitation to community impact. Start by selecting your interest, and CommonJane will connect you to the projects in your community focused on those issues. Here, you can see all the projects that match your interest. Click on a project to learn more about it. Before joining a project, you can see an overview of its details, such as the project goal, existing members of the team, and opportunities to earn currents. When you request to join, you can personalize your schedule availability and the assets you can offer to the team, from policy experience to meeting space. Once you're accepted into the project, you can see the full range of resources available, including uploaded files, the calendar of upcoming events, and discussion board. By tracking your activities on the project timeline, you help everyone stay aligned on the team's efforts while also building a case study that users can later reference to see what strategies worked and what pitfalls to avoid. Civic engagement is a process of continual learning, so CommonJane provides resources to help you along the way. No matter what phase your project is in, there is a guide to help, from key questions for your very first meeting to building a strategy to scale your solutions. With CommonJane, fear and hope for change is turned into collective action.
So our prototyping participants talked to us about just how valuable this tool would be for them and what they're doing. The first, Liz, she's an Ulster County resident and she frequently leads projects, and she talked about the member database, and she said, this would help me find and recruit team members faster for my projects. Another was Evelyn. She is a green energy economist, and she was thrilled at the opportunity to learn from past projects. And she said, being able to see other projects like yours that were successful and why is extremely valuable. And finally, Giovanna, who is a historic preservationist, talked about the impact of seeing what's happening in your community. She said it's so powerful to see people improving their communities, especially when what's happening globally is so upsetting. So by working in Ulster County, we were able to paint a vision of the future of civic engagement. And to make this a reality, we are going to continue our partnership with Rebecca and this community and roll out CommonJane in phases, measuring its impact as we go and adjusting as necessary. And even though we started in Ulster County, it doesn't end there. This process of civic engagement is available to every person across America. And we know that CommonJane won't solve climate change, but we think that the people who use it just might. If only 8% of the population is getting involved in local government and 4 people can stand up to a power plant, imagine what could happen if the other 92% of the population joined them. So change starts in your community. It starts by meeting your neighbors, by building relationships. So start small, think big, and join others. And
Proud of you guys.
we don't have an official thank you slide, but we just wanted to say thank you to Archie, to Cheryl, to our entire DSI cohort, and especially to our community up in Ulster County, many of who are actually here today. And it's so wonderful to see the hard work that you guys are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.